Empathy and Eternity is a multi-layered story driven by the grapple that we face with time. My father's years as a World War II evacuee and how they informed his identity as a child and throughout his life, my own journey through loss in the decade after his death, and the passing of the torch across generations. The story melds prose, poetry, archive and interview into a poignant search for hope and understanding. In telling this story, we worked closely with key stakeholders such as churches, independent shops, pubs and museums in local communities, and the film is equally a result of and celebration of these individuals and places that we must respect, protect and cherish in an ever-changing world. I wrote Empathy and Eternity, which is my debut film, whilst living up north and being out of work due to depression. The quest to tell this lost story was a lifeline. Me and my brother Leo went on our pilgrimage to the area where our father was evacuated in 2022. My research into my father's experiences deepened from there, and we shot a film at the end of July into the beginning of August 2023, finishing post-production in June 2024. I have always bound myself to my father's legacy and what it means to me: history, poetry, and emotional power. I know how proud he would have been that I've helped to eternalize this story, and my hope is that others, particularly the younger generation, may become more interested in forms of salvage, gently encouraging the same archivist mentality that I have inherited and treasure. The film has a few messages that I'd like to briefly touch on, political and personal. Firstly, I hope to convey the perennial nature of war's tragic effects on children. From World War II to ongoing conflicts in Ukraine, Palestine, and more, children can suffer complex trauma which may strongly alter the course of their lives and those of their descendants. It's for this reason that it's vital to financially, morally, and publicly support victims of war across the world, and I'd like to take this opportunity to express my solidarity with these victims. Having struggled with depression for years, making this film was one of the main conduits to me feeling a greater sense of peace, closure, and accomplishment. In the search for hope and light, I'm extremely grateful to my friends, family, and collaborators for their conversations, support, and labor that has gone not only into this film, but into me. Thirdly, there is a deep message in the film of respect, love, empathy, curiosity, and admiration as a foundation for human relationships. This is particularly salient in the father-son relationship, but also in the wider family ties explored in the film. Navigating the loss of my father and looking back on his life was a way of honoring his legacy and his impact upon me and the rest of our family. Beyond my father, there's a deference to elders and history embedded in the film. Including family members in the voice roles was a further way of engaging with older generations, their stories, experiences, and perspectives. Informal conversations with family members offered new perspectives and insights into my father's life and the fabric of our family, bringing us all closer together. There is a reminder there to appreciate the eternality of love for family, friends, and partners, and the juxtaposed transience of life. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank a few people from the area for their recent help. Paul from the Crow for welcoming me back into Tenbury and allowing me to camp on his land. Jan and Simon at Hidden Valley Camping for accommodating me and my team once again so warmly. And to Bobby, Katrina, and Rebecca for promoting the film amongst their networks. I'd like to extend my deep thanks and gratitude to everyone at the Regal, to Kim, Erica, Mike, and everybody working tonight. A separate and profound thanks to the projectionist Russell for volunteering his day for a perfect setup. The Regal is an absolutely beautiful location and without doubt the most befitting space to share this salvage story with you. Having given all of my heart to this project and working on it passionately for 2 years, I deeply hope that this film is worthy of standing as part of the community's story and its representation through time. Alongside local communities, the film would have been equally impossible without the incredible support and tireless volunteer work of my incredible team who are here with me tonight. I'd like to once again thank Beatriz, James, Juliet, and Ollie for all of their time, talent, and sharing belief in my vision. It's a deep honor to screen my film here in an incredible full circle moment. I made a promise in the hills 2 years ago that I would keep alive the burgeoning flame kindled by following my father's story, and I'm glad to have kept my promise and to be able to celebrate the film's completion with you here tonight. The film is 40 minutes long. There'll be time afterwards to ask any questions you like in a Q&A with the team. As I hope is made clear in the film, I have a deep respect and love for this area and its communities. It's an honor to be part of it, not only for this evening, but hopefully for many years to come, thanks to what we have made together. Thank you all very much for coming, and I hope that you enjoy the film. Yeah, so just like to open the floor to you guys. Is there anything that you would like to talk about? Any questions that you'd like to ask? Please go ahead, and the microphone will be brought to you. Just raise your hand. Lovely young lady in white there.
I like the young. Thank you very much. Be quiet. Thank you. A lovely film, beautiful, all of it. What was your dad's profession? What did he go on to become?
Like a lot of disadvantaged people, I think, of that era, from those kinds of very industrial cities, he went into the army, given that there weren't many other opportunities. He was in the army for a while in Egypt, in Suez, around 56, during the crisis there. And he had a litany of other jobs following that, such as bicycle selling, house selling, working in the council. He also ran a nightclub on a ship that participated in the D-Day landings, which is now the main exhibit of the D-Day Museum in Portsmouth, where I'll also be doing a screening in September. And in his old age, he turned to philosophy and kept a website with a lot of philosophical papers, and that's also where the recollections that I draw on in the film, which are completely unchanged from how he wrote them, come from. So yeah, he lived a very varied and rich life, and in many ways his experiences here were the foundation for that. James did a really incredible job, filming. So just to reintroduce everyone, this is James, who is the director of photography, so responsible for all of the shooting, as well as refining some of the later footage when it had been edited by Beatriz, who also is with us today. And then Juliet here is the composer of the score for the film. And my friend Ollie over there is doing some photography in the local area with us as we revisit it and forge new images and memories of the area and its people.
Hi, it's Tracy here, from Tracy and Vernon. Hi. It's not a question, it's a comment, really. My mum was evacuated in the war, and I never really had a great understanding of what she went through, and you've given me that today. How the parents must feel when they have to give away their child, and how the children must be feeling. And I think what you've done today, your tenacity and drive to create this film, I think is fantastic, and your dad would be so proud of you. I just wanted to thank you.
Thanks.
Hold on, just going. Ray, you wanted to ask a question.
Hi, Cameron. Ray Morris here.
Hello.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate you and your crew on making such a good film of it. So when I first come down into Burford Church, you wanted to interview me, and I opened the door. You were all sat down. Every candle was lit in the church as could be lit. I thought, oh my God, what have we got here? And I was very skeptical, but I've come here tonight, and I must congratulate you all for putting this film together. You made a wonderful job. Well done.
High praise from someone who we all esteem very dearly in this crew. I think it's really important to say, and something I had wanted to say in my introductory remarks, that trying to find an initial point of access into the community and an anchor through which I could kind of base myself and feel a sense of trust and understanding and respect, which was incredibly important, was a very difficult process. And it was Raymond and his openness to accommodating me and my brother when we first came, and the crew when we came and wanted to interview him, that really made me feel like all of this was possible. And so I'm internally indebted to you, particularly Raymond, for your incredible help, and I'm very honored that you are also eternalized in what we have created. So thank you very much, Raymond Morris, for your help in the film.
Hello, my name is Michael. Like all of us here, I really enjoyed the film. Thank you. Mirroring what some people have already said, there is little doubt that your father is looking down, being extremely proud at this moment in time. It's very poignant, the film. What's also really fantastic is that yourself, Cameron, and obviously the people, I don't know your names, unfortunately, they've pulled all this together, are so young. And, you know, carrying that legacy forward and shining that torch. I've got a couple of other things as well. The song that was at the end with the credits, was that written specifically for this?
Yeah, so I originally wrote that song in 2022, following the first pilgrimage that I did here with my brother. You know, the kind of base that I come from is that of a writer and a poet, and eventually that morphed into hip-hop. So that song I wrote was not long after the original pilgrimage in September 2022, and I think, you know, as is very clearly stated, it sets out my intentions, and it's only fitting that I released that song and included it in the film as everything kind of came to fruition as a kind of lodestar for me to say to myself and for me to say to the world what I set out to do and what I have done with the help of all the community and the help of my incredible team.
It's fantastic to hear that you wrote it. Didn't expect that response, so well done once again. You're obviously very talented. You've got a lot going for you. You've achieved this with the help of some great people around you. You've been very open as well about the challenges that you have. So obviously you're on this journey and fulfilling this legacy for your father. But if you don't mind me asking, what are your plans for the future? What are your ambitions? What do you see moving forward for yourself?
I think somebody asked me that as the second part of a question at the screening we did in London, and I perhaps subconsciously, tactically avoided answering it. It's very difficult to say, really, to be honest. I mean, in a sense, although, as I said in my introductory remarks, this is kind of closing the circle of the film, in a sense, it doesn't end, because I also have to try and get it into film festivals and, you know, almost follow it through to its full degree. So in a sense, the project will continue, but it's a project of such huge scale and such deep emotionality that I do get the sense that it would be difficult to kind of follow up on, almost, to be honest with you. That being said, I'm open to trying. But in the immediate future, the creative plans that I have are a little bit less time intensive, such as self-releasing my first poetry collection, working on some more music, and maybe doing my own little experimentations with videography, whilst keeping this project going and trying to get it into festivals and trying to secure more screenings and just see where things go, really, as well. I'm very open to what happens. But yeah, it's hard to say. And when I originally came up with the idea for this film, you know, someone did ask me today how I came up with the idea. As I have absolutely no background in film, I hadn't ever held a digital camera in my hands. And the reason is that I was guided by a sense of visual beauty that this area holds and a sense of community. And what belies that is a sense of deep creative vision and intuition So I'm confident that as long as I follow that, I will succeed in the metrics that matter to me, which are justice, truth, and loyalty to my own perception of the world. And I'm confident that I will always continue to do that and not be driven by perhaps more superficial motivations, which is also true of the people around me who were completely unpaid and dedicated a huge amount of labor and talent and time to the project. So hopefully I will be able to continue to work with people as incredibly talented as the people I do have around me. And I'm incredibly grateful for them as well, and know that anything I do is impossible without the people that I'm very blessed to be surrounded by.
Hello, Cameron. Hi. We met the other night at the Crow. I'd like to know how you all came together and what your fellow members thought of the complete production as well, please.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's open it up to the panel, and we'll start with James.
Hi there. I met Cameron at university up in St Andrews. We actually weren't that close at university. We really became a lot closer through this project. We got put in touch via a mutual friend, and arriving in Tenbury a year ago, almost exactly, was kind of I'd read the script, but it wasn't until I kind of stepped off the bus and just looked around and saw really how beautiful this part of the world is that it got my creative visual imagination flowing, and it just felt like a great privilege to be documenting this story that's so potent and personal and meaningful, but that otherwise would be kind of lost to history. And I think it's hopefully a story that also speaks to many other stories that happen up and down the country and continue to happen. And putting that into visual form, I think felt like, as Cameron said earlier, it's the most kind of emphatic way to capture that. And it really was a great pleasure to be behind the camera and be supporting Cameron's vision and working with such a great team. And again, I didn't know anyone else in the team, so this project has been my introduction to them all, and I hope that I can continue to do other things with them in the future. But it's really, it's great to be here, and thank you so much for everyone showing up.
Hi, my name's Juliet, if that helps. So me and Cameron met on our year abroad in Russia, which was super fun and kind of crazy, but and we became very close in a small town called Yaroslavl. That was many years ago now, probably around 6 years ago. And at that time, we both shared, this loss of a father figure when we were young. So we had that common understanding. And little did we both know that 6 years later, there would be a commemoration of that. And when I first spoke to Cameron about this, our initial conversations were about how the music needs to really fuel the film emotionally, but also be loyal, as Cameron was talking about, loyal to the project, loyal to the emotionality of what's going on. And I think that's where my place kind of, how I felt that I could bring that to this through my own understanding, and not to take away from Cameron's journey at all, but there's just sort of a deeper understanding there, and that's what I tried to channel through the music, which I had a really great time writing actually on set before the final cut. So I hadn't actually seen what the film looked like before writing it, and so the music is entirely about my focus on this place rather than sort of coming back from it I was in a lot of the shots, I'm hiding offside in a little pew or just off somewhere on a wall, writing music about the place. And yeah, I just think what Cameron's done is incredible and is just sort of powered through by this it's sort of inevitability for you. It's not even passion, it's just it has to happen. This is an entire commitment, not in like, oh, this would be a cool idea. And it's very easy to follow somebody with that much devotion to a project. And I've learned a lot myself. So, yes.
Hello, my name is Beatriz. I was the editor on the film. I did the initial edit for the film. And I met Cameron also at university, where we were both engaged very separately in creative endeavours. I have more of a film background, whereas Cameron was doing a lot of poetry and music at the time. So this was sort of our first opportunity to creatively collaborate, which was something that I jumped at the opportunity to do with him, because we hadn't spent a lot of time together. We hadn't seen each other for a few years. Yeah, what was the second part of the question? What I thought of the film when I saw it all together. So obviously editing, you have like very much laser focus, tunnel vision on individual parts of the film. So it wasn't until we sat down and watched the full thing together, start to finish, that I kind of felt how emotionally impactful the film is as a whole. And I think that it captures something that I've always felt whenever I walk through a graveyard or something, this kind of feeling of reverence for life and death, that, and like lives lived, lives before us. And I think it just captures that in a way that I've never been able to vocally express clearly right now. But yeah, I think it's beautiful and it makes me want to cry every time I see it. But yeah, thank you.
Can I ask another question?
You can.
So it's been directed at yourself, the question on where to go next, but what has it triggered within the production team on where to go next, if that can be answered?
In some ways, this was the most ambitious project I've been part of, certainly in sort of duration and scope, in a sense. I've done a lot of short films, kind of 5 to 15 minutes, but working on a 40-minute film and shooting it in 5 days, that was the most intense sort of production process. And then collaborating with B in the editing was also that was a long process that didn't finish until just a couple of months ago, I think. So that was also I said earlier that I got to know Cameron through this film. A lot of that happened over Zoom calls as we edited it remotely. Cameron from London and myself in Glasgow. So yeah, I don't know. I've kind of come and gone a little bit. I do a bit of music. I've done film and computer science and other things. I've kind of bounced between different things over my life so far, and I think working on this really has solidified my desire to do film in whatever capacity I can. I'm still working out exactly what that looks like, but I enjoy the process, and I enjoy the collaborative aspects, and also the process of meeting people in the place you're filming. As you, I think we particularly stood out in Tenbury, just a bunch of young people running around with cameras and other gear. So that was, that whole process was just really, really enjoyable, and I hope to be doing more of that, however I can.
So that is a very good question, because I feel like I'm in a big transition stage of my life right now. So my work prior to this has been with Soviet silent film, which focuses on Russian and Armenian film in the 1910s and the 1920s. I've been working with a company called Klassiki and the National Cinema Center of Armenia for the past, 6 or 7 years. And I have done more contemporary films as well, but I feel like this is a nice sort of pivot point into what I hope will now be a more sort of, I suppose, modern film. But what has really solidified in this process is that it is necessary for me to feel strongly about the projects that I'm doing. It's a strange. I just finished my master's at Oxford University, and I feel like that my music has gone in many different ways. I've sort of created my own compositional style that sort of focuses on being a social commentary on our current late capitalist society. So there's that as well that I'm also interested in.
I think that working on this film has definitely, like yourself, made me want to care more about the projects that I am involved in. I think that when you want to work in sort of visual media, it's easy to sort of end up somewhere. And I work in documentary, but I'm not always that invested in the work that I do. And I think that watching Cameron bring his sort of personal story to life has sort of inspired me to want to develop my own personal creative projects further, and spend more time focusing on writing outside of work, where I can develop that side of myself a little bit more, because I spend a lot of time working on documentaries about crackheads and less poetic content.
I'd like to ask a question. Okay. Well, you go first then, Leslie.
Hi. As you know, it's Leslie. Hi. If there was any funding available, would you be releasing any CDs? Because I think it might be important for the future, for the... Sorry, I'll hold it closer. For the schools, you know, if you could get the funding to release the CDs, would you be up for doing that to give away to schools and organisations?
Yeah, that's a good question, and amazingly enough, that's not something that any of us had considered, schools, so thank you for raising a novel point. In regards to doing CDs, there's absolutely no need for funding. I have a CD drive donated to me by Ollie, and I can acquire CDs and easily distribute them. If anyone wants one, they're very welcome to ask me, and I'm happy to provide them. I would be super happy to work with any organizations in the local area and indeed beyond that may be interested in showing the film in schools or churches or indeed any other context. And it's also worth mentioning that the film will be permanently housed in Tenbury Museum as well, which I'm very happy about, giving it a permanent home in the community that it's from. But yeah, that's a great point, and I'd be very happy to do that, and I wouldn't need any funding to do that, although the funding wouldn't go towards making them in that case. It would go towards covering some of the costs that we've incurred during the cost of the project, which was not funded at all. There was a degree of crowdfunding, as you will have seen in the credits, which was around £540, all of which went towards the accommodation costs that we had when the team were housed in Tenbury with you guys. And apart from that, I would say it's cost around £4,000, and I have made around 1.4. So it's about a loss of 3.6. But as I mentioned, I was out of work, living up north with depression and on the dole, And I still only work part-time so that I have the space to be able to do this whilst living in London. So it is worth saying that it has been very financially difficult to do this project. So yeah, I'd be really happy to make inroads with any organizations or any schools. If there's anything anyone thinks is appropriate, I'm really happy to have that conversation with absolutely anyone. And beyond that, you know, other things that we've done, you know, include screen printing posters, putting it on CDs, and the posters are actually available for sale. So if anybody would like to buy one, you can chat to me afterwards. But yeah, that's a great point. I really appreciate you mentioning that, and I'm going to keep that in mind and try and make some inroads. So thank you. Thank you, Katrina, for your wonderful work in the audience.
This isn't actually a question, but a lady wanted to come tonight. She was desperate to come because she was a child living in Burford at the time. And she had, she remembers very well her mother going to pick up an evacuee, and she went to Burford Hall, just like your dad did. And the mum picked out a little girl whose name was, and this is uncanny, Edna Boot from Walton in Liverpool. Obviously, Jean didn't know about this. And then her mother hung around and she watched. And there was a little girl who was left because she wasn't very pretty. And so she took her home as well. So she was desperate to be here to meet you in person and to talk about it. But unfortunately, she was poorly. And just like you said on there, she's written this down. I will give you this piece of paper because this is her writing, and how that some of the children, she's put here, much sanitizing, washing and scrubbing had to take place and hair to be cleansed of nits. Sadly, very sadly, the little girl who wasn't so pretty, who was Dorothy, she didn't stay very long. She left because her mother wanted her home. But Edna stayed for quite some time and became part of the family. Sadly, after a few years, she went back to her mother in Liverpool, and despite being in an air raid shelter, they were hit and they both died. But Jean was so keen to come and see you. Unfortunately, she couldn't, but I will give you this piece of paper because you might be interested.
Thank you very much for that. It's very beautiful to hear. I'm very curious where exactly in the local area they stayed. I can try to remember the name of the house. It was... wasn't Greet, was it?
No, it was in Burford, along Boriston Lane, along... somebody help me. Longfield in Burford. That was the name of the house.
If I am not mistaken, that is the very same girl that my father actually mentioned having a crush on. Yeah. And she was sent back because of the phony war. I think it may have been. I may be mistaken, don't get me wrong. But and was killed during the bombings. So there you go.
Her name was Edna Boot.
I'm pretty certain that's the same person.
Oh, my goodness. I'll tell Jean that.
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you. And now
Let
I
her
know
know
your
my dad had a
father's
crush on
name,
her.
I can, Thank you.
Any other questions? Hold on. I'll go around this way.
Once again, absolutely incredible work here.
Cameron, I think, like most of us in the audience this evening, I came in with a preconceived conception of what the film would be about, and it was completely opposite to what I expected. It was beautifully made. I've done a bit of filming in the past myself, and the camera work on this was absolutely stunning. But I think also credit to the editor, because you're the unsung hero. I know how many hours and hours and hours go into that job, but you don't get the sort of glory. The music, 10 out of 10, it was just fitting the score. But I think you've certainly embraced the moment, and you've delivered a film like I've never seen before. It was completely unique. But you must commercialise this. What's your sort of intention? Would you like to win an award for it, or how are you going to promote it? What's your next stage for the actual film, and what's your Dear Santa moment? What would the end moment look like if you was to achieve greatness with this project? And on a second note, if you had to commercialise this and you had to pay all your willing band of volunteers, what sort of figure would you put to the actual production costs?
This guy's really putting my foot in it with that one. Everyone got paid in handmade posters and hand-cut vinyls, which is very, very much enough. Thank you very much. No, but to respond seriously to that, that's a great question, and it's very sad in a way that there are so many barriers to entry within the film industry, as perhaps you are yourself familiar with. The ultimate metric by which I operated was always rendering historical justice, and that was the only thing that mattered to me. Would I be able to go to my father's grave and say that I've done right by him? And I went there and I knew that I had. That's the baseline. Anything else is extra, you know, and anything else is also just noise. I'm very cognizant of that, or at least that's how I frame it. That being said, there are a few avenues for commercialization. One is film festivals, which I am in the process of applying to. But that's really difficult because they're quite expensive to enter. And that really is, very prohibitive. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it just essentially means that this is a much longer, protracted process than it otherwise could be if there was some sort of funding. But I'm not bemoaning that. That's just kind of how the industry works. So I will continue to apply to festivals and hope that that gives a different sense of validation to the film. But ultimately, it is not the validation that I need or crave. A lot of Juliet's work with Classici is on a streaming platform called Mubi, which is a bit more artistic. And I really like Mubi, and I always have. And that's potentially a goal that we would like to work towards. I think that that would be a fitting home for it if it were to be anywhere. So I will continue to explore that. And I did also mention the screening in Portsmouth. So alongside this kind of intimate community work that we've done here, I'm also trying to make sure it lives in the other communities that are appropriate for it, and to work with museums, and as Leslie said, schools are an option. So I honestly feel like they're the more important avenues for me, but I do appreciate the kind of angle that you're coming from with respect to the quality of the work and why that is worthy of commercialization. And I will pursue it, but I will not use that as a baseline for the value of the project, if that makes sense, which is often difficult in an industry where payment for validation is kind of the core, which is something which I find very problematic. But we'll see what happens. I'm very happy with the film. I'm very happy with how it turned out. I'm incredibly happy with everyone's work, and I can stand behind the film. So I will, with all of my heart, try to pursue every possible avenue and see what comes of it. And if I make another project, sorry, just to finish that thought, I would love to get funding from BFI so that I can pay everyone, make sure everyone gets enough pints and pasties and everything else that they deserve, which is more than I can offer them.
Hello, Cameron. I just wondered about the Liverpool angle, to turn it on its head, because you know my dad was a Scouser like yours, and my dad was evacuated along the coast to Liverpool. But are you going to be screening this in Liverpool? Because I'm sure people there would be interested in seeing the other side of the evacuation story.
Yeah, that's a great question, and unfortunately comes somewhat full circle to the question that was just asked. I had pursued a few angles in Liverpool, One of them was the Museum of Liverpool, and obviously this is a 40-minute film, so it's not really appropriate for, certain kinds of exhibitions. So that kind of ended where it was, which was fine. And I inquired at an independent cinema, much like the Regal and much like the other places that I screened the film, to see if they'd be interested. And they told me it would cost me £300, and I just immediately had to drop the idea. But I have entered film festivals in Liverpool, one of which is held at the very same place that I'm referencing, which is called FACT. So I really hope to get into some of those festivals. I think it would be incredibly befitting. I think that there's a strong chance. I have my fingers crossed, but I have no expectations. I had spoken to a not-for-profit community interest corporation called in Walton, actually, but they're not doing screenings at the moment. But I have made some inroads in the local community, so yeah, I'm hoping that it gets screened in Liverpool, and I've entered all the Liverpool film festivals, and that was quite costly. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully it resonates with them in the way that it should.
Hello again. I was born in Walton Hospital, so yes, hearing Walton again has got a bit of pull. My brother has, where his place of work is in Liverpool, the Beatles tour goes past that, and they frequently visit George Harrison's house where he was born, which is where I'm leading this next question to. Have you been back to 54 Eton Street?
Yes. So as part of the research for this film, there were two, I suppose, major journeys that happened. The first was going to Liverpool and kind of touring all these spots again with my half-brother Bjorn, who is the voice of my father in the film, obviously a proper Scouser. Getting that intimate tour of all the places, the house that he grew up in, where the ship that I mentioned earlier, the Landfall, was moored, where they had the nightclub, other kind of spots, the spot where he grew up, the spot where my dad grew up at Eton Street, and the local kind of pubs and the local atmosphere. That was incredibly important. And the photography that's outside obviously does encompass part of that journey. The second part of the journey was kind of what I was referencing in the introduction when I said about the fabric of our family coming closer together thanks to this film. What that involved was going to meet my other half-brothers and sisters, who I had only met at my father's funeral, and all these people are in their 50s, and I'm only 28. So they're old enough to be my parents, and they look like my father as well. But Freya, my half-sister, is the custodian of my father's archives, and so we went to her house in mid-Wales. I went there with Bjorn, and we looked through all of my father's memory books, all of the pictures of him as a child, the pictures which were in the film, directly from that archive. And that was an opportunity to get to know those people, to get to know how they experienced my father when he was much younger, and to kind of get a more holistic sense of the person that he was, which is incredibly multifaceted and complex. Liverpool as a place is one that I do not feel that I know well. I feel like I have a sense of intimate connection that is ultimately somewhat dislocated, whereas here I feel very grounded. I feel like I know people. I feel like I know the area, like I know the hills, like I know the accent. So it's strange in a sense. I feel closer to this side of it than I feel to that side of it. But it was also beautiful when I was there with Bjorn to be at my Auntie Viv's house, to have her be the voice of Edith Horton, to have him record it. We recorded it all in her house. So I will continue to go there and see how things develop, as I will hopefully continue to come here and see how things develop. Yeah, microphone in the front, if you would be so kind.
Hi, Cameron. I met you about a week ago on top of Caer Caradoc, which is a hill I like going to go into the cave there. But you've, through the film, I guess, not even through the film, but just through the title and by virtue of doing it, you've helped me realise that I go there for connection to empathy and eternity within myself, to experience that for myself and to find empathy for myself and to experience something greater than myself. And I suppose, yeah, you've connected with that through all of you. You've done an amazing job, and it really comes through. And the artistic value that you bring is tremendous, as it has been echoed here this evening. And I certainly hope it goes further. I suppose it's not really a question; it's more praise. You did an amazing job, having never picked up a camera before. It's so inspiring, and you've certainly sparked something in me it's been latent. And I'm just very grateful to be here. Thank you. And it's also incredible to know the man that is the most northernly hop grower in the Northern Hemisphere. Is incredible. So make big respect and huge respect to all of you. And thank you so much for sharing this gift with the world, It's amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that reference to the most northerly hop grower in the Northern Hemisphere. And I do think it's worth saying that, as you saw, it's an incredibly emotional process for me to introduce the film, and it's very difficult. It's very, very vulnerable, and knowing the catharsis and kind of levity that's going to come in Raymond's scene is just around the corner is always the cornerstone of the film that I know will let me settle into the experience of watching it. So I just think that that's absolutely fantastic reference. And I appreciate your general praise, as I've appreciated everyone else's. I'm very glad that it's resonated with people, and to hear, as Beatriz was saying as well, that it has given a sense of spark and direction to other people. That is precisely what I would hope for, and it would be beautiful to see where all of these things go. So, yeah, that's very high praise and something that I'm incredibly grateful to hear.
You mentioned in the foyer that you'd missed some bits out, and I was quite intrigued to hear, having seen it now, I'm quite intrigued to know, really, you missed some bits out? Because that, to me, was a wonderful piece of art. And, I just wondered what the stumbling blocks were to things being missed out. Were there sort of emotional things that you didn't want to express? I don't know. I was very, very intrigued that you missed things out, and I thought it was a complete piece of work.
Mm-hmm. I think what I was referencing whenever I said that was that I didn't bring the full exhibition, which entailed the brass rubbing, which was made in Burford, which I have framed, which is 6 foot tall, and incredibly striking, but very difficult to transport over Caer Caradoc. So I didn't bring that. There were some A1 prints that I didn't bring as well, such as the poster that you all would have seen when you came in before the film started, a photograph by my friend Oliver, and a few other little bits in A1, such as an alternate poster. So that was what I was referencing there. The other thing that I would mention with that, though, is that there were little bits of information that were omitted, and that was mainly something that was a result of the editing process, where obviously, given the amount of information, given the amount of emotionality that's involved in everything, it's really important to have a sense of space for the audience to just breathe and take a moment and let things pace out. And in my desire to salvage everything I could, there was a huge amount of information there, and inevitably, for the film to be as perfect as it is in what it was trying to do and trying to say and trying to convey, certain things needed to be omitted. And they are small things, but they are there nonetheless, and the only place that they exist is in me. And maybe that's how some information should be, just for oneself and not for the world. But they're not important bits of information, otherwise they'd be in the film. But yeah, I did also, because I couldn't bring the rubbing, I did hike 2 days to Acton Burnell to make a rubbing, which is where I met yourself. on Caer Caradoc and slept in fields and so on and so forth. And I did bring the handmade screen printed posters, which again are available to anyone who might want to buy one. So I managed to bring most of it on my back, which I'm very happy about. And I'll be very happy not to have to carry these things anymore and give them a permanent home. So yeah.
I'd like to ask my question now. This building opened a couple of years before your father was evacuated here. Do you know whether he ever came to the Regal, either as a child or has been subsequently during his life?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it is an incredibly beautiful building, and again, it is such an honour to have been able to screen it here and to see everyone before us is, you know, so beautiful and such a full circle moment. I was having this chat with Russell, the projectionist, before we started the film. This cinema did remain open during the war, and there was a lot of wartime propaganda on the radio and in the cinema. So I can only assume that he came here at some point, as well as having the radio, which is referenced in that remembrance scene at Burford Gardens in the cafe. And I also know, again, the other kind of details that are omitted about him playing around the Bergens and so on and so forth. So I will assume that he came here, although I have no information about it. I mean, he did revisit the place throughout his life. He had a lifetime relationship to it, as is indicated in that picture of his second wife, Sue Babington, you know, not long before she passed away from cancer at St. Mary's in Burford. And he also came here with my mum, and he also came here in the 60s and continued his relationship with the Hortons and had other relationships with John Treasure, who started Burford Gardens, as well as people within the community. So I know that he remained incredibly anchored within the community, and this place, like many other wonderful places here, is such a pillar. And I know that he gravitated towards these places. But ultimately, whether he had been here or not before, he, in a sense, has been here now.
Yeah, he has. Okay.
I think that wraps it up. Is there anyone else who wants to raise their hand or forever live in silence? Yes. Not the silence.
Do you want to keep this? I'm going to let you keep this now.
It's not a question, it's just, thank God the flowers were in full bloom when you screened into the Eton Street shot on the film, so thank you for that.
No problem. Yeah, it's very appropriate that everything was in full bloom at the time, as that juxtaposition between the beauty of the wildflower meadow and also, yeah, the life and death in the wildflower meadow is so well conveyed, thanks to the time of year that we filmed it, and also his request that if anyone were to pass by to lay flowers on the Horton's grave, you know, I gathered those flowers with my hands just before that shot, and I'm very glad that these small details that he asked be followed were all followed. So it was a beautiful bloom, and it will continue to be. Thank you. So yeah, feel free to grab a drink and hang around, have a look at the little exhibition in there, ask me anything you like, and have a wonderful evening, and thank you all again for coming. I'm very grateful for everything you've all done.